to SPL Book Talks. I'm Colleen Lawtef, and I'm the manager at the library. This week, we're going to be talking about new nonfiction. We all picked out one of our new books that are in the nonfiction section, and we're just going to talk about them, kind of give them a little promo, because I'm sure you're going to want to come take them out. So the one I chose was called This is Shakespeare, and it's by Emma Smith. It's a really interesting book. It's her kind of take on Shakespeare and the way he wrote, which might seem like, oh yeah, boring stuff, and unless you appreciate Shakespeare. The thing that was kind of cool about this was she talked about the way that Shakespeare writes and the way that he leaves gaps open kind of for interpretation in all of his works. So if you're familiar with Shakespeare, you'll know that he never really gave descriptions of people. What do they really look like? Never really gave stage directions. So it's all open to interpretation. And that was kind of her point, telling you that, you know, there's so much there and it's open to interpretation. So you could do it any way that you wanted, really. And that's why it's so wonderful. And I know that as a director, when I'm directing something, that's part of the appeal, is you can make it anything you want. Some people might be familiar with seeing some of the plays set in different time periods and different eras in the world, or different places in the world. And that's the way Shakespeare wrote. His stories are so universal. And I think that is what it kind of pointed out. So it's really good. She goes through many of the plays and kind of gives you a little bit of analysis. I did not read the whole thing yet. I think I might read some more of it because it was really interesting. But I did read through some of the plays that I've directed just to kind of get a sense of what, you know, she was doing with it. And in the end, she said that, and I agree with her, that the plays really prompt questions instead of giving us answers. It doesn't, you know, everything is kind of open. So we can all kind of go, oh, I wonder what that meant. Or you can interpret it to mean this when someone else might interpret it to be a different kind of thing. And I started reading through Much Ado About Nothing, because it's one of my favorites. And it was interesting it talked about the gender divide with, you've got, and it's very patriarchal, and the women are, it talked about the absence of one of the main characters' mothers. There is no mother in it, it's just the father. And so kind of separates her out and kind of puts the men against the women kind of thing. So it's kind of an interesting, really interesting for me, for someone who really is into Shakespeare. Maybe if you're not though, but you've always been curious, this might be a good way to get started and kind of get a sense of what she, you know, how Shakespeare wrote and how you could just interpret it in the way you wanted. So that was my take on this. So I recommend it. Anybody who likes Shakespeare will like this, I think. So that's my little critique.
Yeah, we talked about this when we went to see Macbeth live, and afterwards the actors like came out and we had a whole big discussion. This was a while ago now, but yeah, we talked about how he didn't really give stage cues or really tells you how anybody looks, and that's like really interesting. And I never really think about that because I never really act in Shakespeare. So, but it's really interesting.
Good.
As a person who does act in Shakespeare a lot, this book sounds so interesting. And Barbara was talking about stage cues just now, and I could only think of one stage cue that is the funniest stage cue in all of Shakespeare, which is exit pursued by bear in Winter's Tale.
Yes.
And that's one of the only stage cues that he gives ever. Right. And it seems like for no reason. So it would be really interesting to like delve into that. Like that would be so cool. Like I'm sure the study of that is so cool to think about, and especially the person who does that and like acts through it, it's like, oh, I would love to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, or like why my character is sort of the way it is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I loved it. I think it could be a good reference for someone like me who likes to read and direct plays and stuff. So Or if you just like reading them. I mean, because there's so much open to interpretation. It's pretty cool. So, all right, Miranda, let's go on to you.
Hello. So the book that I chose for this week is called The Language of Butterflies: How Thieves, Hoarders, Scientists, and Other Obsessives Unlocked the Secrets of the World's Favorite Insect. It's by Wendy Williams. And I really love biology and wildlife science. That's why I picked this book. I'm really drawn to those types of topics. And in this book, she talks about the order of insects called Lepidoptera, so it's butterflies and moths. And she divides the book up into 3 different sections. So it's past, present, and future. I've only read the introduction and the first chapter so far, but it's very interesting already. So in part 1, in the past, she talks a lot about the Victorian era, when collecting, insects, plants, anything like that was a really big thing during that time period. And it's just crazy how obsessive that they would get over their collections and having something else that no one else had. And that's where a lot of these museum collections came from, was from the Victorian era, and they have these drawers and drawers of insects and stuff, and it's just so cool. I also learned some new things already, which was pretty cool. Apparently, their proboscis, which they put down into like flowers and stuff, they don't suck to get the nectar out like you think that they would. It actually is like a sponge, so it's porous, and they soak it up instead through that method, which was pretty cool. And I also learned that there's such a thing as a vampire moth, which was pretty crazy. I had no idea. So it's full of lots of interesting information. It's so exciting. Just the biodiversity that's out there is pretty cool. I think in either the present or the future, she talks a little bit about bioengineering and things that scientists have learned to like create things. There was something they created for asthma patients. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I can't wait to read about it. So I think it's going to be pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. I love the vampire thing. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Just in time for Halloween.
Right?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I love butterflies. Certainly not a biologist or a botanist or any of those. No, but that sounds wonderful. Anybody else? Yeah.
Save our pollinators. Save our pollinators.
There we go. So true. What would we be without them,
Coffeeless, honeyless, most foods we eat less people.
Right.
Yeah, the Bee Movie does a really good job of showing.
That's right.
Like jazz.
Okay, Justine, I think it's your turn.
It is. So the book I picked is called The Case of the Vanishing Blonde and Other True Crime Stories. It's by Mark Bowden. He is a journalist, and this book goes through 6 crime cases that he wrote about in his whole career. His career spanned like 25 years, and I guess these were 6 of the most super interesting ones that he reported, and I really liked it because I just love like true crime and Dateline and like America's Most Wanted, everything. I used to read Wikipedia pages about serial killers because it's just interesting to me, and I don't know why. But yeah, this book was really good because it was a pretty short read. It was less than 300 pages, which was nice because sometimes true crime books can go on and on forever, and you just want to get to the good stuff if you're like me. I really enjoyed it because since they were based on his interviews, you got it from the like perspective of the detective, so you could read everything that they were thinking while they were going through the cases. And
it was just really interesting to me. And I don't know, it was kind of short, so there's not much to talk about really. I won't spoil what the cases are about, but they're pretty whack. And if you like true crime or mysteries or anything, then you will really like this book.
Did you have a favorite crime in there?
I think my favorite out of the 6 was called A Million Years Ago, which I'll explain it a little bit because I don't want to give too much of it away. But basically, there was this man and woman who were married, and one day the man comes home and finds his wife dead in the middle of their house. And there's stuff all around, and he's like, so did we get robbed? And my wife just got killed for no reason. Like, just pretty random. And they couldn't find anything for like 20 years. This case just sat for 20 years, and the evidence just sat in the back of a freezer forever. And they interview some suspects, but they don't really get anywhere. But then there's this one suspect who turns out to be pretty crazy. It's not the husband, because that would be too easy. It's a pretty big plot twist. So that is the 4th one out of the 6 that they go through. A Million Years Ago. I think that one was my favorite because of the plot twist. This is the killer. And it wasn't the husband, because it's always the husband. But this time it wasn't, so.
Yeah, I'm definitely also one of those people that, like, I read serial killer Wikipedias. Like, I watch a lot of true crime. I think I'm almost done with Criminal Minds, and I started it, like, 3 months ago, and I'm in the middle of, like, 3 crime documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But this sounds like a pretty good book. I like that it's like a bunch of separate kind of smaller cases, because the thing with true crime books, like why I never really read them, is that it's like one like drawn out book about every little detail about a case.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want the like quick and juicy like satisfaction of like, wow, they got the
like
killer.
when you read the Wikipedia page about the murder, you don't go to the early life tab, you go right to the murders.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I do, but I'm biased because I'm a history person. Also, I have a podcast for you both to listen to. If you like just getting to like the juicy stuff, it's called This Is Why We Drink. So good. That's a very good title. Podcast. And I am also one of those people who I have a book that's all about female serial killers. You know, and I agree. Like, that's one of those books that's structured, that's just like the juicy bits, you know. And this book sounds very interesting. It sounds good.
Yeah, and I like that too, Marie, about the female serial killers, because that is also really interesting about true crime, is how like just like the statistics of how our brains work, like it's so like tied in with psychology, and just like statistically, like women are serial killers much less than men are, and that is just, I don't know, true crime, amazing.
That's funny, because I'm not a huge fan, or I don't want to watch it, or I don't want to read it. But then when I start watching it or reading it, it like draws you right in, and you just can't look away. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right. And this book isn't super gory either.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
That's cool. That's great. Sounds like a good one to read if you're.
I do love the idea of getting a bunch of them together. That's nice.
Yeah.
Not nice, but
yeah, right.
Interesting.
Convenient. Yeah.
Okay, so Megan, I think you're next.
Okay, so mine is called The Beauty in Breaking, and it's by Michelle Harper. She is actually an African-American emergency room doctor in Philadelphia, and this is a memoir. She grew up in an abusive home, and just before she moved to Philadelphia to start her career, her husband actually decided to leave her. So she was, I guess you would say, broken at the time, and so that's where the title comes from. But she finds that working with all of her patients in the ER really kind of helps her to have a perspective and to help her to start to heal from all of the things that she's going through internally. And I think that the main idea is really just that we're all broken in some ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is. And even a doctor, I think a lot of the time we think of doctors as being, superheroes. And this is really interesting because it's a doctor who's saying, I'm a human. I'm not, I'm not a superhero. And I do have my own issues, and it really takes you through how seeing different people with different issues in the ER, it brings up a lot of stuff for her from her past and is able to help her to start to heal as she's treating patients. So it's really interesting. One of the critics called it like Grey's Anatomy, but true and better, because I think it's a lot more real. And not so much, I don't know, not so much seeing people as just the happy things in their lives, and really kind of showing you that everyone has something they're dealing with. So I think it's a really interesting perspective that we don't see a lot.
That sounds amazing, actually. I think I remember reading the cover of that and thinking, what a great book that would be. And you're right. I mean, we look at doctors as, like you said, superheroes, and even when they portray them on something like Grey's Anatomy, they're kind of superheroes, but they play up the drama of it too much, I think. And this sounds much more, like you said, real, and because it is. I mean, wow.
And I like that it sounds like with this book, because I know with a lot of books about dealing with trauma and stuff like that, it's kind of a lot of like, oh, just like feel better, go on a walk. But I like that it's kind of more telling the story of like, you aren't alone. Like, look at all of these stories. Like, everyone is broken about something. And that is really nice to see.
And especially since doctors see the worst stuff on the planet, and there is no way that they don't bring that home with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is nice.
That's great. That sounds really good.
And as I said, she's African American, and so that perspective is also there.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about, I think she said 2% of physicians are African American women. So it's really, it puts you in an interesting place with mostly white male colleagues.
Yeah.
You can imagine. So.
Wow. Yeah, that would be great. Look forward. I might want to read that.
Yeah.
All right, Barbara, let's hear about your book.
All right. On a turn from that one, I got Vagina, a Re-Education. You can't really see it. I have really bad lighting. But it's by Lynn Enright. I think that's how you say her name. She's a journalist. She's written for a few names that I recognize: Vogue, The Guardian, BuzzFeed. Pretty great. But this book is really good. It tackles kind of everything that comes with being a person with a vagina. It talks about hormones, puberty, the way it looks, if it's normal for yours not to look how everybody else's looks. It goes about pregnancy, birth control, and even things that aren't as common, like vaginal mutilation, circumcision, which is crazy but really interesting to hear about. But yeah, I really liked this book, and I think this book, I think when you look at it, you think like, this is a book for women. And she says it in the book too. She's like, this isn't a book for women, and it's not even just a book for people with vaginas. It's a book like that just teaches you about vaginas in a really real way that you can understand and make sense. And I really liked it. I'm not fully through it yet, but as far as I've read, yeah, it's pretty good. There are a few diagrams too for some of the things, and it's not gory, it's not gross, and she doesn't write anything in like a really like medical terminology kind of way. It's very like you're talking to your cool gyno. She's letting you know how it is, and it's cool. I really liked it.
That sounds so good. I want to read this book so badly. Is there like, do you know if there's like a chapter that deals with like birth control and like the like that aspect of?
Yeah, I think I'm not there yet. I think it's chapter 9. It talks about fertility and like the stigma around talking about birth control for women. And yeah, so it should be in there. I'm not there yet, but I believe so.
Gotcha. Sounds awesome. This book sounds so awesome.
I love that this book exists because nobody talks about anything. And then if you have questions, who are you supposed to ask? Like
Right.
random people on the internet? No. So I really like that there are books out there for people who might have questions that they're too embarrassed to ask or they don't know how to ask them. I don't know. That's just nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the great part about this is that she isn't just like pulling this stuff like out of a hat somewhere. Like she has all of her sources listed like by like page by page. It's really cool. And I'm a bit of a nerd, so I do go through and I like look up where I am in the chapter. Like I'll see her source and I look it up and I look at that source, and that's just really interesting to me. I don't know if there's anybody else like out there like that, but yeah, it's really cool.
I think it's a really important book, honestly. It's not something, like you said, Justine, we don't talk about it. And who do you go to ask any questions about it? I mean, if you're lucky, you have a cool gyno, as you said, a cool, doctor who can really feel comfortable and talk to you about anything like that. And or make you feel comfortable talking about it, because it's not something that we talk about a lot, and I think we should talk about it more. Women should be better at being able to talk about it with other women, at least.
And the common thing that I hear is like, well, why don't you just ask your mom? And it's like, not all of us can ask our moms.
Not gonna ask
like,
my mom.
I mean, I have the privilege of being able to ask my mom because, like, if anybody knows my mom, she's super cool. And I have done that, but like, not all of us have that privilege. And also, you were just talking about this sort of stuff with other women. Like, we should make it like there's a stigma about talking about this with men too. And it's like, I was just talking about my mom. My mom's so cool. My brother is so cool. I can sit down and have a conversation with him about this stuff, and he'll just be like, yeah, bro, like talk about it. Like, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to listen. And like, we need more men like that in this world. We need more men like that. It's just,
I think we're getting there. We're growing them a little better now, I think.
We're growing them better.
Well, we have to train.
They're like tomatoes. They're tomatoes that we've planted in the garden, and we're putting down nice little fertilizer. We're growing them better.
Well, they do take a little, cultivation and fertilization and
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them are better than others. There's some good ones out there. But yeah, it's true. We should be able to talk about this with anybody, really.
Yeah.
It's a process, as you know. Everything's a process.
Yeah.
But yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting. Glad that book exists.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, Marie, you want to take us out with yours?
But I chose World of Wonders. There's a subtitle, hold on. In praise of fireflies, whale sharks, and other astonishments. So if you are looking for a book that is a short book of small essays that just give you serotonin each one you read, this is the book for you, because it is literally about all of the weird animals that we have on this planet and how cool all of them are. Also, this book was written by Amy, her name. I'll try. Amy Nezhukumatahil. I could be wrong about that. But she is an Indian immigrant of this. She's living in the United States, and her mom is a doctor who was working at a psych ward for a while, so she was living there. Like you can imagine, being a child living in a psych ward, and that her and her parents moved around a lot. So she never really found a place that she felt like she belonged. And the one place she felt like she belonged was with all of the weird animals that she traveled around and studied. She's not a biologist. She's actually a poet. So, and this is her first book of essays that she's written. She is coming out with a few different books that I'm really curious to read about. Because I like Megan was talking about earlier, like this perspective of like an Indian immigrant looking at like all of these different animals is so like it's an important story to tell, and especially since she was living in the United States when she was doing a lot of this. So anyway, she's a poet, so her prose is amazing, and you get lost. You truly get lost in this book. I just picked up this book recently and I've already gotten through half of it. Like, it's so good. And each of the chapters is a different, what she calls remarkable feat of nature. So like the first one is about a tree. Most of them are about animals, but she does have some plants that she talks about because we have some weird plants. She has one on Venus flytraps, which I think is really cool. But she does one on the vampire squid. Did you know those existed? I didn't know those existed, but like they're short, sweet packages about all of these cool different animals. Yeah, she does one on narwhals, which also the other really cool thing about this book is it's illustrated. Each of the essays comes with an illustration of the animal or plant. So I'm going to show you the illustration of the narwhal. Like, this is so cute. I would get this as a tattoo. This is so cute. I love it. So this is one of those books that like it's so highly rated on Goodreads right now. And I think part of the reason is we are in a global pandemic and people are trying to find any scrap of serotonin that they can. And this is a short, sweet book that'll give you just that. So like if you're looking for a cute little diversion about like awesome animals that has spectacular writing, like this book. This book. Also, I love nature, so that was one of the things that drew me to this. But also, this cover, I know like it's hard to see, but this cover is just so cool. Like all of the illustrations are so cool. This book is just so cool. Everybody should read it.
That sounds really cool, like you said. And it is beautiful. The cover is beautiful.
Yeah. The cover is absolutely beautiful. Let me see if I can find one of the plants. So this is what's called a corpse flower. A corpse flower. I mean, my like weird thing about female serial killers really came out when I was reading this book, because like vampire squid, corpse flower, there's like other hold on.
Got like a Halloween theme going on because we had the butterfly, the vampire butterfly, and now we've got
the
vampire squid and the corpse flower.
Yep.
Yikes.
She does one on fireflies too, which is really cool because fireflies, if anybody knows anything about the biology of fireflies, they are remarkable. The fact that they can make their own light is crazy. But yeah, so this book, it's so cool. It's so good. And like I said, it's just a little diversion from all of what feels like sludge surrounding us right now in this world. It was definitely a good diversion for me. So yeah, I can't wait to finish it. I'm really excited to see all of the rest of the illustrations, because they're in color too, which I don't know if you could really see it, but they're in color, and it's an artfully, like, you could tell that Amy poured her soul into this book, because
Nice.
yeah.
It does sound really good. It sounds like one that I would pick up because I'm also a big nature lover. It sounds interesting just from the standpoint of like the biodiversity that's out there. It's just astounding the things that you can learn that exist you never would have imagined. Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's
I
some.
love to read, sorry, I love to read nonfiction, and I'm really into anything museum related. So I think that this would be really interesting because it's something unique, things that are unique, because that's a lot of what I go for is sort of interesting objects, but I feel like that sort of goes with this too. Just interesting things in nature.
Me too. Me too. I'm a huge, museums are my life. Museums, libraries, my life. So like this, it's just more of those things. It's like things that are unique. So cool.
Wow.
And these things like are naturally like occurring. Like they're not unique things that human made. Like these things are unique on their own and in their own right, which is so cool. And it just makes my appreciation for like animals even more, and not even animals because there are plants, but like nature in general. It's just like, wow, the world. It's crazy. So cool.
Yeah, like you said, it's a little, like a little garden in the middle of all of the sludge, you know, right now.
Yeah.
That I think a lot of people I feel like a lot of people in the world now are going back to nature in a sense that, in a way that we never, or in a long time have not done. And I think it's because there's so much noise out there in our heads and everywhere around us that you just need to get away from it. And I think that obviously it shows in those kind of books, yours and even Miranda's book. So
well, and this book is a good way to do it without leaving your house and being unsafe.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Nonfiction is so cool. There's just, the thing is, I think the thing about nonfiction is because it's just such a wide category. Well, there isn't like a category. It's about everything. So it could be anything that you're writing about or reading about. Now, obviously, just from our little selection here, I mean, it's pretty wide, pretty diverse. So I think there's something for everyone. And of course, all of these books are at the Sherburne Public Library. So we encourage you to come, and many more. There's so many to choose from. It was hard to pick out one. I don't know about you girls, but I thought it was like there were many I would love to have, you know, featured or whatever. So maybe we'll do some more in the future. So this has been great. I think we gave them something to think about. So thanks for coming and listening to our little book talk. Next week we are, is it Halloween? Are we starting with Halloween books? I think we're starting with our favorite Halloween books next week. That will be our talk. So that should be kind of interesting. Who knows?
I'm going to talk about practical magic.
Ah, I knew someone would choose that.
I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now. I love that book. I'm calling it.
Preview. Okay. All right. So thanks again for coming, and we'll see you next time.